Welcome to the Tattoo Marketing Podcast. On this week's episode, we have Ben Mcadam from profitscollective.com. Ben is what you would call a numbers wizard, and we will dive deep into defining your goals, creating a plan for those goals, and increasing your business revenue. This is a great episode. Ben is very knowledgeable. So enjoy and let us know if you have any questions. Ben, welcome to the podcast. Super excited to have you here. For the people who don't know who you are, could you introduce yourself, what you do?
Sure. Pleasure to be here, Jesse. I always enjoy our conversations. So my name's Ben Mcadam. I am Australian. G'day. And I help business owners with their numbers. Not just like an accountant might do of like, yay, here's a statement that you don't really care about. It's like, let's use the numbers to grow your business, make it more profitable, earn more money for you and your family.
Yeah, and when we first started working together, I remember in the first 2 weeks, you saved me something like $40,000 a year. So actionable steps that people can actually use versus just like theories.
Yep, exactly. No jargon, no ratios, maybe one, but I'll be nice. I'll be gentle.
Appreciate that. So like we were talking about before, a lot of people that are getting ready to open a studio or in the beginning aspects of it don't necessarily, when I talk to them, know the numbers, where they should be, their profit margins, how to get more profit, what they should be, saving, everything along that. So if you just want to kind of take it from day one, that would be great.
Awesome. Okay. So if I was an accountant, I would start saying, oh, you've got to look at your P&L and have some bookkeeping and stuff. But no, that's not what we're going to cover here. That's a later topic. The first thing you really need to get clear on is your goals. You're opening a tattoo studio because why? What do you want to get out of it? What do you want to get out of it in the future? What kind of a life do you want the studio to enable for you? Do you want to open multiple ones? Do you want to have people working underneath you? Do you want to earn lots of money, or you just want a fairly comfortable living without a huge amount of time having to work so you can do whatever with the rest of your time? If you get really clear on what you want, that will help you make a whole bunch of really difficult decisions later. Because when you're in business, there's a lot of different things you could do, and they're just different shades of gray. It's how do I choose? There's so many options that get presented to you like that. For example, you want to do signage on the front of your studio. How many billion different ways are there to do signage in terms of what the sign looks like? But then there's also the sign. Is it just paint, or is it LED strips, or is it light? There's billions of different choices. And having some goals helps you make some of those choices where each of the options looks just about as good as the other. So, for example, for some of my clients, there was one of them, a couple who ran a business, Jeremy and Sadie, and when they'd been in business for about 8 years, not really paying themselves much. They were running at a loss, they were losing money, having to put money into the business from their personal savings when we started talking. And they were pretty burnt out. They've been working for 8 years and now there's a loss and they don't know when it's going to get any better. And so I had a conversation with them about, what do you actually want? And they said, we want to sell our business for $10 million. I'm like, oh, okay, big round number. That's a red flag. It means they haven't really thought about it. It's we do sometimes. We're like, oh, I want $1 million. That's a good go-to. 10 million is becoming the more popular one these days. And so what they wanted to sell their business and be able to live off the money, so that they could do whatever they wanted with their time. That was their goal. Okay, you don't want to sell your business for 10 million. You want 150 grand a year in income that you don't have to work for, income from investments or stocks or something. So once we figured that out, we're able to work out, okay, if that's what you want, then to sell a business and have that much money left over after taxes and given general investment returns, they needed to sell the business for 3 or 4 million, not 10. So because they were clear on what they actually wanted, which was the income, not the big $10 million exit, because they were clear on what they wanted, the goal was a lot closer all of a sudden. It was a lot more achievable sounding. Like selling a business for 10 million versus 3 million. Like 3 million is like, oh, okay, yeah, I can do that. And so we had the one call, and they chopped a whole bunch of stuff off their to-do list, off their list of expenses. They got rid of stuff that they didn't need to do. And they ended up having $100,000 profit for the year just from being clear about what they wanted. And then they made a better plan, or we made a better plan to get them there. And that meant a bunch of stuff they could stop doing. It also meant they were more motivated because they thought, okay, selling it for 3 million. Yeah, we can see how we do that in 3 or 4 years, given where they started. Versus 10 million, it was like, it's always like 5 to 10 years in the future. So getting clear on what you want is like the first step. And you can use the numbers from there to work out what you got to do to get what you want. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. And most people, including myself, do have a goal, but it's not like an actual, like, these are the actionable steps to get there. Like, I want more money, but that's so does everybody. Like, how do you get there?
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. It helps if you specify exactly how much money you want. So if you want more money, how much exactly is it? So for some people, they would like to upgrade their lifestyle, or rent a better place, or get a better car, or eat out a bit more. Most of us are only like one relatively small upgrade to our lifestyle away from feeling that we're doing great and we have a great life. And so you just work out, how much does that cost? If you want to eat out more, how much extra is that a week? How much extra is that a month that you're going to have to earn? Like, for most people, they're usually like 100 to 250 extra dollars a week away from feeling better. And in order to do that, like for tattoo artists, you can say, okay, so that's somewhere between $500 and $1,000 extra a month. How do I get an extra $500 to $1,000 extra a month out of my business? As opposed to, I just want to make more money. It's like, well, what do I do? How hard do I have to do it? How long am I going to have to wait? Like, you never know. But when you get a bit more specific, you can say, okay, well, an extra $500 a month is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Like, how many more clients? How many more tattoos am I going to have to do in a month? It's like, okay, well, there's 5 or 10, depending on how much they charge. How am I going to get 5 or 10 more customers? That's a more solvable problem. It's like, oh, well, I just ask 15 of my customers to refer a friend, or 15 of my customers to come back, and 5 or 10 of them will. Ta-da, I'm done. So in order to like earn more money, all you have to do is ask for 15 referrals. And so getting super clear on what you want, you can see how it makes it really simple when it comes to planning. Like, oh, I've only got to do this. If someone comes to you and says, oh, you've got to update your sign, that'll help you earn tons more money. It's like, nope, no, I don't. So, but then there's some people who might want a couple thousand extra per month. It's maybe someone's staying in their van or at the tattoo studio, and they're like, I want to rent things. Or maybe someone's got a family and they want to provide a bit more for them, or maybe you just want a better life for yourself. And in order to have a couple thousand a month, that's a different problem to solve. Like, you can't just ask for a couple of referrals to solve that problem. You might say, okay, how much money do I need? It costs this much to rent a better place. It costs this much for, if you want to upgrade your car loan or whatever, this much for bigger food budget or entertainment, things you want to go out and do. And you say, okay, that's my target. It's an extra $3,000 a month, or an extra $5,000 a month, however much it is. And you say, okay, how do I earn an extra $3,000 or $5,000 a month? Like, that's just not asking for referrals. That's like when you need to talk to Jesse about marketing things. Like, how do you get a lot more revenue in a scalable way? But I think through those examples, you can kind of see how like getting specific saves you from wasting a whole bunch of time and money on things that aren't necessary.
Yeah, 100%, man. And one of the things that I would push anybody to listen to this to do is knowing the value of a new client, because that way you know how many you need every month. And just obviously some people are going to come in, they're going to get, just a small, shop minimum tattoo or a flash tattoo or something like that. And some are going to come in and get, the whole back done over the next 6 months to a year. So it's knowing what the average value is. Because if you don't know that, it's very hard to figure out how many new clients you need to hit that goal, or how many clients your artists or apprentices need to get in their chairs to hit the goal you want.
Yep, absolutely. And that's a great segue to the next step, what I was going to teach about this. So having a goal is totally different to having a plan. Just saying I want to earn more money, even like I want to earn an extra $5,000 a month. Like that's a better goal, but it's not a plan. So one of the steps that no one else seems to talk about but me is before, like there's a step between the goal and then creating a plan to achieve it. And that's what I call the picture step. This is where you build a picture about what your tattoo studio looks like at the point where you've achieved your goals. So 12 months from now, when you're earning that extra $5,000 a month, what does your tattoo studio look like? Like how many customers do you have? How many people do you have working for you? What are the working hours? How much you're working, not just like when is it open? What are you having to do in terms of your time in order to keep that amount of customers coming in? And whose help do you need to make all of that happen? So as Jesse, you were just saying, work out the average value of a customer. And so you can say, all right, well, if I have worked out that I need $10,000 of revenue every month to pay the rent on the shop, pay for the supplies, pay for the team, and have some money left over for me. If it's 10,000, if that's my revenue target, you can work out from there how many customers you need. Like, well, it's 10,000. So if they're $100 each, then that's 100 clients a month that we need to see, 100 people in the chair. Or maybe 50 people in the chair and they all come back twice, something like that. But you can work out a bit more specifically as to how many people you're going to need. And then you can work out, well, how many hours is that going to take? Can I do that on my own? Do I need to change the opening hours of the studio? Do I need to charge more? So building a picture, just adding that one little detail of how many customers you're going to need helps you plan a whole bunch of other things, make a whole bunch of other decisions. If it turns out that in order to hit the target amount of income you want without having to hire other people, it might be like you're in the chair a lot of the time and you need help. You need someone like, for example, Jesse to help you get the customer, the bums in the seat. Or it might be that you need a receptionist or a service that answers the calls for you when you're mid-tattoo. You might not be able to stop and pick up the phone. Or you're handling the payment for somebody or something like that. It might turn out that you need to hire another tattoo artist. You need to hire an apprentice. But you can only really guess what you need if you don't get specific about what this end picture looks like. So you got some specific goals. There's an extra 5,000 income. So, all right, if you want an extra $5,000 income, how much extra revenue are you going to have? How much extra expenses are going to come from servicing that many clients? How much is left over? Do you need more income? Okay, raise the income, recalculate everything again. When you do that, it makes it easier for you to make a plan. It's like, okay, I can probably get to the revenue number I need in 3 or 6 months with the right help. I'm probably going to need to start hiring someone in 2 months from now. And that person's going to need to work part-time hours. And I'm going to need a little while to train them, make sure they don't suck, and make sure I don't have to replace them. And then 6 months from now, okay, I'll get to where I want. And this is when I need to hire. This is the number of people I have to have coming through each month. You can kind of feel how then you can make some actual decisions when you know what you got to do so clearly.
Yeah, I think that's a huge part of, being able to grow. And one of the things that is usually not done, again, including myself until I work with you, is actually, having a literal plan and actionable steps to get there. Because again, once you know what you want and you work it backwards, it's it's just a numbers game. Usually it's fairly simple. So it makes it way easier than just hoping and wishing and saying someday you're going to get there.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I don't like someday.
Yeah.
Someday is just like it never arrives, and eventually, like you burn out and you just like give up on your dreams. And you know, if you got kids, you don't want to set that example for them. And like, it's just let's not do someday. Um, let's do which day specifically. Work out whether it's achievable to do it then, and if it's not, then you know, adjust the goals a little bit. But like, be working towards something so that you know you're making progress and that you are on track. If you keep doing what you're doing, you're to get to where you want to go. That feeling makes it so much easier to get through the crap times in business. Like, there's always crap times. Like, you get a bunch of customers cancel their appointments at short notice, so you can't fit anybody else in. And then a few people come and they want a refund, or they need a fix up or something like that. It's like, crap happens all in a clump sometimes. And it's a lot easier to deal with if you know that you're doing the right things. You're going to get to where you want to go. So, goals, picture, then you can start talking about projects. Like, what are the projects that need to happen in order to get to where I want to go? One of the projects might be, I need more customers coming in regularly. Another project might be hiring another tattoo artist. Another project might be looking for a bigger studio and working out how to get out of your lease or sublease it to someone in the meantime. So like, there'll be these big changes that when you've got a clear picture about what the end goal looks like, you can compare to where you are now and say, okay, well, I'm really far off in the revenue, got to get some help, or I can't possibly handle that number of clients or any more clients than I've currently got. I've got to hire a tattoo artist, or I don't have room for another tattoo artist in the studio. I mean, I need to get a big studio. So when you have a clear picture, like, you can see, do I need to hire a studio? Is a yes or no question. It's not, maybe, I don't know. You can actually make the decision. And then once you've got those big projects, you slot them into your year. Like, when are you going to do them? When it makes sense? Like, maybe there's a busy period, or maybe you take time off over Christmas. So when are you going to do each of these things? And when, you know, one project might need to be done before another one. So if you need a bigger studio before you can hire a tattoo artist, then you can like pick the times during the year when it most makes sense to do that. Just pick a month, spread it out a bit. And that's a plan. You know exactly what you want. You know what it looks like when you get there, so you can tell whether you're on track, and so that you can pick the right projects and slot them into the right timings throughout the year. That's a plan. That's how you turn, I want to make more money, into, I'm going to get more money. This is the few things I've got to focus on doing that are going to get me there. And then the final step, point number 5, is review. Like, set a calendar reminder or a reminder on your phone or something every 2 weeks, twice a month, at least once a month. Say, am I on track? Am I doing the things I'm supposed to be doing? Am I moving forward? Am I doing the things, but they're not quite working and I need to try something else? It's all good to set a plan, but like, we want to make sure the plan actually happens. So that's my my 5 points on goals and planning. It's a little bit different to like New Year's resolution. I'm going to earn more money, and then like just do a bunch of random stuff and hope it works.
Yeah, no, it's a much better way to approach growing your business. And one of the things I love about, being a business owner and an entrepreneur and is, normally when somebody wants more money that has a 9 to 5, the only way they can do it is get a raise, make a little bit more money, or save more money. And this was one of my favorite conversations that I've had with you. It's like, okay, well, we don't need to save more money. We just need to make a lot more money to get you where you are. Don't cut back on the things you want. Because really the sky's the limit with what we do. And, there's plenty of studios out there that are making $1, $2, $3 million a year. And so it's doable. It's not like some impossible task. I know of studios that are in the middle of nowhere and almost all their clients fly to them and they still make over $1 million a year. So it's possible. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a perfect point. Like, when you're working a job, it's like, what's the most kind of a pay rise you're going to get? 5%, maybe 10%, unless you get a promotion, and then maybe it's bigger, it's 10, 20%, 30%. But when you're in business, like, you can double in a month. if you do the right things, especially if you identify what's missing or what needs to be fixed. Maybe it's like no one knows you exist. Maybe it's people know you exist, but they don't really care because what they see of you online is like not all that interesting. You haven't even got any pictures of the amazing tattoos you do. Maybe it's they love what you do, but they don't know how to contact you. You know, there's like no phone number or no invitation to like, hey, reach out. We got a few slots open this week. Maybe it's they try to book and no one's answering the phone, or you answer the phone and like what you say on there like drives them away. Or maybe, you know, people get there, you show them the work or the state of your studio and they run away screaming. You know, there's like a few different things, you know, that can get in the way that you might be sucking at. And that's fantastic. If there's one of those pieces that I just talked about that you suck at, or maybe it's like your bedside manner when you're doing the tattoo, like one of those things, if you suck at any one of those things, that's fantastic because it's so easy to solve something that you suck at and bring it to like kind of average performance. And so if you focus on that, fix it, then it can really make suddenly a massive difference. Like you can do one thing and suddenly your business doubles. Whereas like in a job, like you have to work for how long and how hard to try and hopefully get a promotion. If you know the business you work for has the budget for it and someone else doesn't screw up the business you're working for and all that, it's like you can, you know, you fix these things and like life can change so fast. And I really love that about entrepreneurship. And I love that about what I do is because I can have that effect on somebody's life. Like, hopefully there's some people who are listening to this and like they send in a comment to you and say, hey, I did that thing Ben suggested and like life is wonderful now. That's why I do what I do.
And it's definitely made a big difference to a lot of people. Again, it's an entirely different way of thinking about business and goals from anything else I've heard. So, and it's, you know, most of the stuff we hear is meant for people that work a 9 to 5, or, you know, you need to invest in the stock market or stuff like that. And again, if you're investing in your own business, like stock market's great, obviously for some long-term stuff, but you're going to make what, like 10 to 11% a year. Or if you're putting money investing to your own marketing in your company, you spend $500 and you book $5,000 worth of, you know, clients in the next month. That's an amazing return. Like, why wouldn't you do that more?
Yeah, exactly. And it's not just like the 500 to 5,000, which is bloody good return on its own. But like those people come back and refer your friends. So like that $500 like goes a really long way over the coming 12, 24 months. Especially if you've got a good system to like reach out to previous clients and say, hey, how's the tattoo going? We've got a few slots open this week if you want another one. Like this, which I know you've got some better ways to phrase that. Yeah, it's really, really powerful. So that was goals and planning. That's one of 6 modules I got in a new program I'm launching, but I think that's the most important one for everybody to do, as well as the listeners to the podcast. I've got another one I could go through if you like, if we have time.
Definitely.
Awesome. So goal numbers, very important. The other, almost as important, is about your offer, like your pricing and your costs. It's like, I call it the 80-20 of profitability. Like if it's the only thing I get to teach people, I'll often teach them this. And then if I have 2 things, I'll teach them the goal stuff as well. So how much you charge has a direct link to how big your tattoo studio can get. The people who have like multiple locations are charging differently to the people who are working really hard in their one location and wish they had more time to sleep. Usually the big difference is pricing. There's a few other things, but like this is the bit that nobody talks about. So if I've only got this one opportunity to share this with you guys, then this is what I want to mention. So if you want to have other people working for you, if you want to earn more than 50, 75, 100 grand a year, you need to price differently. So imagine that you're currently charging $50 for an hour of time in the chair. How many hours can you work a week? In the chair, probably 40, because there's lots of other stuff you got to do. Even if it's 60, say 60, that's $3,000 a week. And there might be some people listening who go, "Wow, I love $3,000 a week. I'd have such a great life with that." And you probably would, but why stop there? Let's kind of explore past that limit. 3,000 a week, 12,000-ish a month. It's actually more than 4 weeks in a month, but let's call it 12,000 in sales. Like people are paying you $12,000 a month. From that, you got to pay your rent. You have to, spend some time outside of those 60 hours that you're in the chair. You got to spend some time answering inquiries or trying to get more people in. Because, like, how do you fill 60 hours of time in the chair? It's like, you're probably going to do a lot of work for your marketing if you're not getting help with it. So it's not just 60 hours in the chair. It's like probably another 60 hours outside the chair working on business stuff and doing your books or whatever. And that's maximum $12,000. There's no possible way that you could earn any more money. So you're like, oh, I'll hire someone. Great. Okay, so you're going to hire someone to sit in the chair next to you and to do some tattoos as well. If you're still only charging $50 an hour, it might be like $75 for a tattoo that takes you an hour and a half or whatever. It doesn't matter how you price it, but how much you're charging is about $50 an hour. If you're still doing that, how much are you going to have to pay a tattoo artist? Out of that $50 an hour, how much do you actually get to keep? Is it $15 an hour for a tattoo artist? Probably not. Not one that's any good. One that's good is probably good enough to do what you're doing and charge $50 an hour for it. So if you're only charging $50, like, you can't afford a good tattoo artist. Now, depending on your area, you might be able to get good tattoo artists for cheaper, or you might be easily able to charge a lot more. Like, just go with the principle here of, if you're charging as much as it would cost you to pay another tattoo artist, you can't pay that other tattoo artist, because you've also got to pay for the chair that they use, the electricity they use, the ink they use, and having to have a bigger studio so there's room for them in their chair, and they're going to use more toilet paper in your toilet. Like, there's a lot of other costs apart from just paying their wage. So obviously you got to charge a bit more than what it will cost to pay them hourly. So you go, okay, well, I'll just put an extra 50% on there. I'll charge $75 an hour, and I'll pay the tattoo artist $50. Like, that's enough, right? Not really, no. You still got to pay for the rent, and you've got to pay for marketing to get in enough customers so that other tattoo artist has enough stuff to do. So just adding an extra 50% on top isn't enough. What I normally find as a good rule of thumb is 3 times what it costs to hire a tattoo artist. If you price that way, your business can grow into the mid 7 figures, like 5 million revenue a year business with prices like that. Because then there's enough of a gap there in your prices. You're not only paying for the tattoo artist, you're paying for the marketing that fills their chair. You're paying for all the other expenses of having them there, like paying for the chair, paying for the extra rent, paying for the ink. You've got a little bit of money still left over after all that to pay for all the other costs of running your business, like having a bookkeeper or, hiring a Aussie coach, for example. Pick a random example. And then you've still got some money left over for you, for all of your effort. And you've still got some money left over for you for all of your effort in organizing all of this and managing all of this, bigger studio. And as you get bigger and you've got multiple locations, you'll use some of that gap as well to pay for whoever's managing the location, or the senior on the location might have some managing duties or some admin duties as well, and they're going to need to pay a bit more than any other tattoo artist. And so, like, you need that big gap between your price and what it costs to pay a tattoo artist. And if at the moment you don't have any tattoo artists, now is the time to start raising your prices gradually. If you increase your prices like $5 or $10 an hour every 3 or 6 months, no one cares, no one notices, no one will object. But if you ever want to earn more than, say, $6 or $7 grand a month, you got to be thinking about some of this stuff. is that because you're also like when it's just you're the one in the chair, you got to pay you a decent wage as well, plus pay for all the marketing to fill your chair and the rent so that there's a spot for your chair and so on. So pricing is really important. And that rule of three, ideally we want like 4 times. You want to charge 4 times what it costs to do a tattoo artist. That's what most other businesses are doing. The ones that are really big have like a 3 or 4 times multiple on the staff cost. So they've got to pay rent. They've got to pay for their marketing. They've got to pay like their legal team, whatever. So that 3 or 4 rule makes such a big difference to how much money you can make and how stressful and overworked you are. Does that make sense?
Yep, 100%. So it's not saying that you should be that third rule that shouldn't cover everything. That's just covering the cost of goods, so the artist and stuff like that. It's not including rent.
Yep.
Those things.
Yeah, exactly. Makes the calculation a lot simpler, and it's just the cost of a tattoo artist. You can probably figure out how much you get paid because most of the people listening to this who have their own studio might have worked for someone else at some point, so they have an idea about what people cost. And multiplying by 3 or 4, most people could do that in their head or on the phone calculator pretty quick. So it keeps it nice and simple.
Mm-hmm. And so what would you, what is a good profit margin that a business owner should see, or a shop owner? We're talking, after everything's paid, what should they be taking home out of the entire gross that's coming in?
Yeah. When it's smaller and it's just you'll end up taking a pretty big chunk, almost all of it, apart from having to pay for the rent. That's a pretty big expense. As you grow, taking 20 to 30% of the revenue for yourself. When you got, a location, you got a couple of tattoo artists in it, or you got multiple locations with a number of tattoo artists working for you, aiming for 20 to 30%. Taking of the revenue will be reasonable. You can do a lot better, but what I tend to find with business owners is they either, usually they take too small an amount. They work for less they could if they just work for someone else's tattoo studio, because they don't know this thing about pricing. And the need to raise your prices, the need to charge so that you can feed your family, grow your business, and work with great tattoo artists.
And for sure, a lot of people, they're always afraid to raise their prices. But I've never really seen it happen where the juice isn't worth the squeeze. Like, you might lose a couple of clients, but you're still going to make more money. And now you just have a little bit more time on your hands.
Yeah, absolutely. There's an exercise that I walk people through, and we can do it now, that to try and remove the fear that stops people raising prices. If we've got time for that.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a hypothetical scenario that it might have actually happened. So I had a conversation with a client a couple of years ago. Oh, it was 6 or 7 years ago now. And I said to them, look, you need to raise your prices. And they're like, I can't do that. My clients will leave. I'm like, okay, cool. Let's explore what that actually looks like. What if they left? Now, at the time, they were like really significantly undercharging. I said, double your prices is what you need to do for a start. And then we need to like raise them a little every year from there. So they were like, no, I can't do it. And I'm like, okay, I managed to convince them. Didn't hold a gun to their head, but was considering it. So that's because it's a big deal. So doubling their prices. I said, just do it as an experiment. You can always like blame me and say, look, I'm really sorry. I had this guy who said it'd be a great idea. How about we put your prices back to the way they were? So like I gave them an out if it didn't work out. So they raised their prices. They let all their clients know. And I have like template letters and things that I have for people these days. They raised their prices and doubled the amount of revenue, the amount of money coming into their business, except that half of their clients left, didn't want to come back. And now the client was the one that wanted to hold a gun to me. They were really unhappy. Like, I lost half of my clients. I mean, yeah, sure, I've got the same amount of revenue I had before. You know, it was 10,000 a month. They doubled their prices, which could have taken them to 20, except that half of their clients left, so they were back at 10 again. Like, this was awful. This was awful. I hate half of my clients are gone. This is really terrible. They were really cranky. They were really upset with me. And I said, yes, your revenue is the same, and yes, I put you on a big emotional roller coaster that was really stressful. But I want to point out, you have half as many customers now. Same amount of revenue, half the cost, half the time. Like, you know, tattoo artists listening to this, like, imagine if you were earning the same money now half the time in the chair. That's a pretty good outcome.
Yeah.
Then suddenly, like, you can add, you can add a lot more clients, or you can like just enjoy your life, enjoy a lot more free time, like whatever you want to do. Going back to your goals there. So doubling your prices and losing half your clients, they're pretty extreme examples, and you'll be even more profitable even though you go through that whole stressful period. And there's different things. Like, I usually don't recommend to people they double their prices. I've once recommended tripling it, and that went okay. Because the thing about when you triple your prices, you can lose like 2/3 of your clients, and you're good. So yeah, most people like put your prices up 10% if you haven't in ages. No one will really notice. No one will really care. Putting your prices up 50%, yeah, maybe you might need to have a few conversations with people that come back or refer their friends and like, oh, hang on a minute. You told me this was $100. What's this $150 nonsense? You might have to prepare yourself for a few conversations like that. But if you raise your prices 50% and like 1/3 of the people say no, that's fine. You're just as good off as you were before, except working a little less. So if you raise your prices enough, it's okay if people say no or don't come. There's a blog post on my website I usually point people to that, there's a table on it you can look up and say what percentage price rise you're looking at, what's your margin, like how much money do you get to keep after paying for the tattoo artist to do the work for you. Explains all the thing, and you can see like what percentage of clients you can afford to lose with that particular price rise. If you just Google profits, collective, lose customers, it'll pop right up.
Okay. Yeah, and I love the, I guess the whole thing with that, like it can be scary, but most people, especially if they've already worked with a tattoo artist and they like them, like they're willing to pay that. It might put off some new people, but if you already have a client base built up, that could be a lot more profitable than people think. But again, I know it's always scary to raise your prices, but it's it's the what way to make more money.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a podcast episode or a blog post or something on like how to raise your prices. Just Google Ben Mcadam, how to raise your prices, or Profits Collective, how to raise your prices. You should find that. Or Jesse can put it in the show notes. But yeah, it's not scary, because if you raise your prices, you can afford for less people to work with you. And there's ways to make it less likely that they'll object. So with those two resources, like a lot of you listening probably need to raise your prices. That's the case for every business owner. Most of them need to raise their prices. And so hopefully that helps. Can get you a bit of money.
Definitely. And Ben, I know I've had you here for almost an hour. One more subject I wanted to touch is how much you should be spending on marketing every month to hit your goals.
Yeah. So I have a bit of a Goldilocks zone, like the story of Goldilocks and the three bears. She tried some porridge, it was too cold. Tried the other porridge, too hot. Then she tried the baby bear's porridge, and it's just right. Marketing budget's a bit like that. If you spend too little, like everything's cold. You've got cold pipeline, cold leads. Anyone who does happen to reach out to you isn't really enthusiastic about it, and you have to do a lot of convincing to get them to come in. If you spend too much money, it's running too hot. It's like it's unnecessary to waste that money. So if you go through the goal setting process and you work out like how many clients you need, you can talk to a marketing agency and say, this is how many clients I need. What do I got to do to get there? But as far as like specific budget, somewhere between 5 and 15% of revenue. Anywhere in there is just right. If you get a lot of referrals, you can spend a little less. If you got a lot of competitors, or you want to grow fast, or you're relatively new and unknown, then spend a bit more. Like you could spend 20, 25%. If you get your prices right, if you raise your prices enough, you can spend even more on marketing. But somewhere between 5 and 15%. Knowing nothing about your business, you should be able to spend. I can confidently say you should be able to spend 5 and 15%. So if you want, an extra 10 grand a month in revenue, you could spend, $1,000 to do that easy. But also include the current revenue you've got, because you've got to get your customers back, and you've got to get more customers to replace the customers that maybe only came once. So your current revenue plus the revenue you want, somewhere between 5 and 15% of that. Is that all clear?
Yes. Yeah, a ton. And just to, I guess, reiterate, it is off of your goal, not what you are currently doing.
Yeah. Yep. You know what's required to get the kind of results for the tattoo industry. Like I know we've had discussions about it. What would you recommend is a minimum amount that they spend on marketing? Like, is there a minimum amount you found where it's like, if it's less than $500 or don't bother? Like, is there a certain minimum commitment they're going to need to get used to? I mean, I've just given them 5 to 15%. But, it's got to be at least a few $100s to make a difference. Yeah,
if you're a studio that can handle more, I should say, if you have at least 4 to 5 artists, 3 to 5 artists, something like that, at least $1,000 a month, I would say, 500 minimum. And the cool thing with the tattoo industry is, although it's becoming more prevalent, marketing isn't a huge thing, at least for paid advertising. So like when you go to Google Ads, the cost per click is like 60 to 80 cents. Like it's nuts. It's almost the Wild West, and it's crazy.
Yeah.
So
for context, if I was to use Facebook ads to get clients, my cost per click would be over $100 or something stupidly ridiculous, because there's so much competition. I remember you shared with me what the cost per click is for tattoo artists. I'm like, it's shooting fish in a barrel. It's like so easy to make money. I'm so jealous.
Yeah, it's absolutely nuts. We get people requesting consultations from like $11 to $16, and you got to think like the minimum these shops have is usually about 200, 150 to 200. That's the minimum. If they get the smallest thing they can, like it's amazing and a good time to get into it, because the tattoo industry is projected to double over the next 6 years by 2029. And you're going to have all these people that are in their early to mid 20s opening studios that are great with social media, know about marketing. So I think in 6 years, that cost per click is probably going to be a lot higher. But right now is a pretty amazing time to start getting into that.
Yeah, no, that's pretty cool. I mean, that's fantastic cost per consultation, geez, compared to other industries. But even as you say, social media presence and social media stuff is going to be more and more important. Like, even if all you did now is you spent the money to build your audience, it's never going to be cheaper to do it. I was listening to another podcast saying something to that effect. Like it is really cheap right now for media and for building an audience. And once you got that audience, it's like really easy to turn it into money. As opposed to like, people 3-6 years from now, we're going to have to be building their audience when it's not 60 cents per click or $11 to $16 per consultation. Like for them, it might be $200 per consultation. And then not only do you have to get that person to get one tattoo, it's like you have to get them to get multiple tattoos just to break even on that cost later down the track. Whereas like if you've got an audience and you build the audience now, like it's going to be so much cheaper. You'll crush everyone else. Business will be so much easier.
Yeah, and for building audience, like you said, even if you just boost posts or put a little bit into it, if you're a single artist or something, and you stick a radius 30 miles out from your studio and build that audience, doing one nationwide it might look cool. You might have 40, 50,000 followers, but what you really want is, 10,000, 5,000, 2,000 followers, if you're in a big city within 30 miles of you, 60 miles of you that can drive to your studio. And that's huge.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, those numbers, I'm very jealous. Maybe I couldn't sit in a chair and do tattooing, but like maybe I could open a tattoo studio and like hire artists. That's really cheap. Anyway, dreams aside.
Ben, I've had you for an hour. Where can people find you and get some more information?
Yeah, so I like helping people. That's my thing. I realize that my best form of marketing is just help as many people as I possibly can, and I'll get clients and opportunities from it, and that works well. Makes me happy too. It's my thing. So Profits Collective. Find my website. There's articles. I've got the Business Numbers podcast, where I do like solo teaching episodes, and I used to do some interview ones. Social media, I'm mainly on Facebook, but I've realized that I should probably do a bit more after, working with marketing agencies. I'm like, I should probably, work on my own marketing a bit more. So I'll be spreading out across the social medias soon: Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn. Search Profits Collective or Ben Mcadam and look for the guy with the beard and the Aussie accent.
And we will put all your links to your podcast and your website under this, because I really do think anybody, especially if you have a studio that has a handful of artists and you're looking to grow, like I said, the first 2 weeks working with you after we went through the numbers, saved me like $40,000 a year. So that's that was one of the best investments I made.
Yeah, that was a pretty good return. That reminds me, I need to put that on my case studies and testimonials page. I'm a bit slack at my own marketing.
That's a good one.
Was good to chat to people. I hope this was helpful.
I think it'll be very helpful for a lot of people. Thank you, Ben. I appreciate it.